Speaking about priorities,
now
let's go to education. Now, a few days ago, there was hue and cry, especially from about 10,000 students who were informed that the courses they had done or were doing at the universities were termed as useless. 133 university courses were found to have been useless. This was after a report was released by the Commission of University Education. This was after an audit was conducted last year, and the report released this year. But now, today, the CUE says it has denied delisting the 133 courses offered in 26 universities, saying that the report was non-conclusive. I ask you, Joe, there are all these students with all these degrees spending money, time, resources, and then you come and tell me that my paper is worthless, and then you come and tell me that it's not. This is a yo-yo. You're playing around with the.
I'm hoping that the CUE is right. That there was nothing like that. That this was a bad dream. That we were all just talking about something that didn't exist. But honestly, I think there is a real problem if you look at how the university education system has degenerated, quite frankly, because right now, first of all, if you look at the students, they are dealing with very basic issues of survival.
Yes.
You know, what are we going to eat? Do I have enough power? Where do I live? Those kinds of things. So already there is a problem there with the basic conditions that are needed to be in place for there to be meaningful university education. Secondly, you have watched the conversation over the last 1 week. I really don't think that it came out of nowhere. We know for a fact that there's been a proliferation, a mushrooming of universities. You find some building you're walking somewhere and then the 20th floor is some campus of a certain university. Come on, there was a time when the university was supposed to be a serious place, a hallowed ground, a place where you could go to and you actually feel the presence of some academic prowess around you. But right now, anything seems to be a university. And that is really dangerous, because I once spoke to a professor who told me that there are certain minimum requirements, certain basic essential conditions that need to be in place before something can qualify to be called a university. The government tried, for example, to enforce this idea that people need to have PhDs before they can start lecturing at the university, become senior or full professor and that sort of thing. But what we have seen right now is very different. Everybody seems to be teaching at the university these days. I don't know why I'm not. So there is actually so there is a problem of general breakdown in the standards that we used to maintain at the universities. And the effect is what we are seeing, where universities, because now they have to raise money, they're focusing on people who are doing all manner of courses there, and the focus seems to be
Speaking
money.
of that, LK, before you jump in, this non-conclusive audit that was done also showed that a lot of these universities, I don't know if you would call them dishonest or misrepresented their capacity both in terms of resources and the teaching staff. So they claimed they had what they didn't have. And this sort of like ilichangia what we are seeing now. Yvonne?
But here's the problem. If you take a look at the Commission for University Education, this is their mandate. They are required to accredit universities. And this is what they say. For any institution to be accredited, the Commission must be satisfied that the institution has adequate physical, human, library, financial resources, and viable, relevant academic programs, and a sound structure of governance. And in fact, the CUE is required to accredit and do regular re-inspection of universities.
So do they work on hearsay?
Now, let's take a look at this statement that they issued on the 20th to sort of clarify this. And this was one that caught my eye. Somewhere in that statement, they said, some universities with unapproved but running programs have been directed to commit themselves in writing to have the programs accredited even as they mount them. Why not stop them from doing it altogether and then get all the requirements in place? So they're doing this, it's the cart before the horse, or now that let's do it at the same time. And that is what is interesting, because they said they're not useless, but they've just not been accredited because they don't have the right facilities. For example, like we were saying, if you want a bachelor in chemistry,
well, that means we don't know whether they're useful or not. That's the problem.
That's right.
And that is... They are playing around with people's lives, literally. Linus.
Yeah, Jamila, first of all, fake or useless degrees, no reason to worry. We have the Supreme Court.
I see where you're going with this one.
I see where you're going.
we have the Supreme Court. On a more serious note, I want to agree with Joe that first of all, this is an issue that cannot be looked at in isolation. It's a question that is calling for an audit of the entire education system, and not just the universities. Go back to secondary schools, go to primary schools, and even the ECD centers, because there is a huge problem. We are operating in a rogue environment when it comes to education, because education has been reduced to a commercial venture. It's the space of businessmen, and businessmen are coming in with a very low degree of morals, first of all in setting up the universities. I spent a night some time back in one of the towns, I don't want to mention which town, but the hotel was downstairs where you are lodging actually. Yeah, and then upstairs is a faculty.
Of?
A university faculty. I think it was medicine or something like that.
That's a very sick faculty.
So that is the state of our education system. That is why when you saw Fred Matiang'i, when he came in as Minister for Cabinet Secretary for Education, he had a lot of cleaning up to do on simple things like, does a facility meet the description of a university, even in terms of physical location? You can't be a university on a fourth floor or of a building next to a bus stop, and then just below it is a secondary school, and just below it is a pub.
boutique.
And Francis, I want you to jump in on this issue by looking at how many students depend on the HELB loans to be able to go to school and get these degrees, whether useless or not. And we actually have now, Yvonne spoke about it in her explainer, about the threat to those who are said to be defaulters. 7.2 billion shillings owed by 74,000 defaulters. The ministry is threatening, the government is actually going to prosecute these guys. Half of them don't even have jobs.
Let me jump in twofold. One, is it a question of quality or quantity? Some of these things also have a political dimension. You remember some years back, every delegation that visited the president then was saying, tunataka university. Tunataka university. And what happened? All the shining polytechnics in the villages were quickly transformed into university colleges. And then the pressure mounted that, oh, sasa tunataka ile university college yetu ikue a full university. Yep. And so we have ended up with very many universities that are not necessarily about quality. And I think that's why we need to go back to few quality universities. Quality in the sense that they're offering degrees that are, or courses that are relevant, and that necessarily give the students sufficient knowledge, not necessarily to be employable, but also to think through the scenarios, through the environment that they work in, and generally people who can be able to think.
Yeah.
Think.
I mean, I think
the problem is that we ended up with many institutions that are very commercial driven, such that, I mean, you go to villages and you're finding universities, some students are being called to some universities and parents can't even pronounce
Francis.
Those names.
31 public universities, 6 public constituent colleges, including Alupe, which is one that we heard them complaining about some of their courses, 18 private universities, 5 private constituent colleges, and these are the ones that have not gotten their full charter, and so they're sort of attached to a major university, and 14 institutions that have what they call interim authority. 74 in total are the numbers we're dealing with. And remember, also the rush for degrees happened during the Moi regime, with parallel degree courses. Everybody was.
But the quality at the time.
Regulation was tidy.
Okay.
He kept an eye personally as the president on the education space. And the public universities particularly were very, very well run. Remember, he was the chancellor of all universities, and he took it very, very seriously. He turned up for those graduations. But anyway, even the seriousness in high school, in primary schools, was quite strong. But I wanted to add something, Jamila, not just about the commercial pressure, but what Francis was raising about the degenerating quality of instructions. You find that in schools, or universities, because of the few numbers of the lecturers that you're talking about, they have to take so many.
Yes, in different universities.
In different universities.
Yes.
The SGR is doing a great job
Mombasa,
facilitating Nairobi and Mombasa. Is this what we really want? And finally, there is a need for a stronger performance or stronger leadership at the Ministry of Education. We've seen the CS chasing loan defaulters.
Yes.
I think this is more urgent because you're chasing loan defaulters who are probably holding useless degrees.
True. Okay. And Agumba on Twitter says, let the crackdown continue. Some of the courses being offered are no longer beneficial, but misguided students end up taking them only to find themselves jobless. You look at the rate of unemployment in Kenya is 17.1%. You can't even compare it with our neighbors in Uganda and Tanzania. And 1 in every 5 Kenyan youth is jobless and they're of working age.
The Federation of Kenya Employers actually put out a survey in November of last year. They called it the Skills Mismatch Survey Report. Now, among the questions that they asked, and they were asking employers, they were asking them how long it takes to train, or rather for an entry recruit to settle into the job. For them, they said quite a long time. And when they were asked why, they said that they had to teach them the practical or the application of the theory that they learned in university, and that takes time. They also talked about lack of exposure or experience and lack of training from the universities. When they gave suggestions to tertiary institutions, they asked for universities to review the curriculum, to have courses that are relevant to the labor market. They asked for a direct link, obviously, between faculties and employers, and to impart sufficient skills and competency to the students so that organizations don't have to spend so much money on retraining them. They also had some suggestions for the government to review the curriculum to meet labor needs. So there is clearly, even the employers themselves who are saying there is a problem. The graduates that are coming here don't meet
let's even give an example of our newsrooms. We have graduates, interns who come and spend time with us, but for them they clearly tell you what we are learning here is so different from the theory that we're learning.
I once sat on an interview panel, and Yvonne knows this, and there was a certain gentleman who had a master's degree in economics from one of the universities. A local university. And he said that he had studied economics and statistics. So someone, I will not mention, asked, so could you tell us, he said he had done a project on foreign direct investment, and then we said, okay, so could you tell us what is foreign direct investment? Then he said this is the money that is sent by Kenyans living abroad back home. Yes. And then said, okay, so what is the difference between microeconomics and macroeconomics? Then he said, well, microeconomics deals with domestic issues and macroeconomics deals with international issues. Masters in economics.
Yes.
I rest my case.
Thank you. And I remember we sat in that interview panel together.
Yeah.
Oh gosh,
Yvonne, before you finish, there's one thing I really have to say here. Keep Lori, I hope I haven't said Keep Lori. Keep Lori on Twitter says, in Kenya 2019, as long as you have a 10 by 3 feet veranda, you qualify to open a university college. Basically, anything can be a university in Kenya.
Talking about anything, the HELB issue.
Yeah.
Well, the students who benefited from the Higher Education Loans Board have an obligation to pay.
Thank you.
We should not encourage them not to pay, because those are taxes generated by Kenyans, and so they should pay. However, they should only pay when they are in gainful employment, and when they can, first of all, even earn something so that they can be able to pay.
Yes.
So when we get to a situation where you're threatening them, it's like pickpocketing a naked person.
Oh my. Yvonne, I think we should go for a break.
You were waiting for that pun. I knew it was coming. All right, so, gosh, let's take a break. Remember, even as Jamila is reading your feedback, it's continuing to show at the bottom of your screen. So keep tweeting us. The hashtag is NewsGang at Citizen TV Kenya. Our handles are too many to mention at this point, but I'm sure you know them by now, right?